Quite often before I start these, I become reflective. I've expressed that before. And quite often my reflection takes me back to my childhood. Not the cradle days maybe, but the youth that I had and the things I learned as I grew up. Just like all of you learned from things that happened to you and when you grew up. It's interesting to me that the learning process is so meaningful that if we stop and think about how we learned something, quite often it's revealing. And it's revealing in such a way that you can take the principles that you learned when you learned a certain thing and apply them to other things as you go through the rest of your life. And as I've thought about some of these things, I've started to realize that more and more. And in a way, it gives me comfort because it makes me realize that the experiences I have are purposeful, and not just purposeful in the moment, but purposeful for things that are coming later in my life. I think that's why we're told when things that happen to us that aren't quite what we'd like them to be, we have a tendency to say, why me? Why this have to happen to me? And yet we're told that what we really should say is, what am I to learn from this? Because that way it makes sense out of opposition and gives a purpose even for the downsides, I guess you could say, of your life, if you want to think of them that way. However, when you start to think of them that way, then they're not so much downsides because they propel you to something higher. I don't know if any of you remember when I did a YouTube upload, and I called I think they called the YouTube the reverse roller coaster, and compared life to like a roller coaster that was inverted. And so instead of gradually getting lower and lower and lower, we gradually get higher and higher and higher. And yes, there's low spots, but those low spots propel us to the next level, which is higher. And there's more enjoyment that comes at that higher moment, even though, yes, we probably know that there's going to be some drops, some low spots coming up, much like that inverted roller coaster thing. If you get a chance, go listen to that again. I think if I remember right, I even drew some things out on a whiteboard to try to explain it. But when I think of life that way, it just gives me comfort because, like I said, I start to realize that there's purpose in the low spots as well as the high spots. I don't want to expand any more necessarily on that tonight, but I have been, like I said, reflective on some of the things I've learned and how I learned them. The one that came to mind today as I thought a little about this was that I learned to ride a bicycle a little different than I've seen a lot of people learn to ride bicycles. Even if you see it on TV or wherever, or I've observed it with my grandchildren teaching their children. And, you know, the big thing nowadays is to get training wheels, a little bicycle and training wheels, and get them started that way, which is, I don't have a problem with that. But, and you see the parents kind of running along the side and holding them and cheering them on as they're able to keep the bicycle upright and let the training wheels do their things. Well, my experience learning how to ride bikes was entirely different than that. Let me explain. We had a kind of a gentle sloping hill in a little pasture that was just in the back of our house. It's kind of on the way to where we did the milking of the cattle when we milked them at night and mornings. And there was a power pole between the house and the milk barn. And it just so happened that it was on the upper part of this kind of gentle sloping pasture, which was not really used for pasture so much unless we had, some bum lambs or some calves or whatever that would use it a little bit for pasture. But it grew a lot of dandelions, I remember. So there was times of the year when it was just almost completely yellow. But it had some grass and, like I say, a gentle slope. So back to the bicycle thing. Our house had one bicycle. All the kids used it. Anybody that wanted to ride a bike, as far as I can remember, there was just one bicycle option, and it was a grown person's bike. I guess you'd call it a boy's bike, and it didn't have fenders on it, as I remember. It had just the rubber tires and steering wheel, and it was pretty big for me when I was trying to figure out if I would ever be able to ride that like I'd seen other people do in our family that were older. But I didn't give up. I started to think, well, there's got to be a way. So what I'd do, because it was too big for me to get on, let alone stay upright on. So I would get it over to this telephone pole that was on the upper part of this pasture, and I would lean it against the telephone pole. Now that telephone pole had a little, if I'm recalling correctly, that telephone pole had a wire around the bottom of it with another little post kind of securing it into the ground. And if I got up on that little stump and I leaned the bicycle against the post, it was just about right so that if I planned carefully, I could actually kind of jump up and get on that bike. Well, when I jump up and get on it, I had to hurry and grab onto the post because I didn't want to just get up on it and then fall off again or tip over. So if you can picture me, I'd be on this bicycle seat, and I would just be leaning against this post. And finally, I'd get to the point that I thought, well, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. I made a plan. I thought if I grab onto these handlebars and kind of push myself away from the post a little bit and point it towards the bottom of the hill, the pasture hill, I'd see how far it'd take me. And that's how I learned it. So I'd get on it, and I would just try to stay upright as long as I could. I think the first time or two I got about 2 rolls of the bicycle wheel, and then it would tip over and I'd crash into the dandelions and dust and pull the bicycle back up to the post and try again. And I just kept doing that. And what I found is that if I just kept doing it, and I kind of concentrated down the hill as I was grabbing onto the bars and not being scared. I forget exactly how old I was, but I wasn't very old. Anyway, if I'd focus downhill and I'd let go, and so I finally started setting goals for myself. Like I'd go maybe 2 turns of the wheel, and then before I'd hit, and the next time maybe I'd go 3, and the next time 4 and 5, and pretty soon I was a third of the way down the hill before I'd tip over. And it eventually grew to that, to where if I did it just right, I could maybe get to halfway down the hill. Keep in mind that I'm not pedaling or anything else. I'm just riding the bike as it rolled down the hill and trying to keep it upright. And I took a lot of falls. But I just kept bringing that back up and bringing it back up, and finally I got to the point where I could actually ride that bike almost to the bottom of the hill and keep it upright. And it's amazing because, and I think this has some application to all learning in general, is that once you're able to do something once, you get a mindset like, okay, I did it once. I can do it again. I can make it happen twice because I made it happen once. And that was my mindset. And then finally I did it often enough. It actually got to be kind of fun, even though I wasn't pedaling. I was just trying to keep the bike upright and stay on the seat and hold on to the handles until I got to the bottom of the hill. Well, I soon realized that that wasn't the way most people rode bicycles. Most people actually try to use the bicycle to take them somewhere. So what I did to get it to take me somewhere is I stuck my legs down and tried to put them on the pedals. Well, they wouldn't reach the pedals. I wasn't big enough. The bike was too big for me, I guess you'd say, because my feet would not reach the pedals. However, I found out that if you watch the pedals as they come around a little bit and not get distracted too much so that you'd crash and wreck, that you could actually push down on the pedal when it got to the top of its cycle and give yourself a little boost of speed and wait for it to come around again and give yourself another little boost of speed, first with one leg and then with the other one. And again, I'm crashing all the time while I'm learning this, but it's, I thought back on it and I thought, it's all right. It's all right. You got her done. The way I got it done was you start to push on these pedals, and finally at the bottom of the pasture, it kind of leveled out, and it started to turn up toward a road that we had. And I learned how to, at the bottom, kind of turn the wheel and push that pedal as it came around to the top part of its cycle. And sometimes if I pushed it hard enough, I could get it to cycle one time through and push it with the other leg and then push it with my left and then my right and back and forth. And I could finally get the bike to take me partway up that hill towards the road that eventually would take me up by the house if I made all the corners correctly. So that's how I learned to ride a bicycle. And eventually I learned how to lower the seat a little bit, try to get my legs to fit the pedals better. Anyway, the reason I relate this story is because it gave me a sense of accomplishment, and it made me realize that if I wanted to do something bad enough, I didn't necessarily have to have somebody buy training wheels for me or run alongside of me and hold the bike up. I could figure out a way to do it. I didn't have to, what would we say? I didn't have to be beholden to anybody. I just had to keep the bike upright. It was my job. So it encouraged me. And I think it played a part in my life later on because that mindset that I developed was one of, you can do this. Just stop and think and figure it out, and you can do it. And I don't know if any of you, if that rings a bell with any of you, or if there's some similarities in your own life with things. I'm sure there is. But it's really quite comforting to know that. To know that you can actually take charge and make it happen. And I think there's too many people in our society now that, this is my own opinion about stuff, but there's too many people in our society right now that think that somehow the world owes them everything and they got to be, they're entitled to somebody to stand next to the bike, and they're entitled to training wheels, and they're entitled to a smaller bike, and they're entitled to this and that. You know what I mean? I'm not just talking about bikes here, but things in general. And therefore, they don't try. They wait for it to happen, or wait for somebody to bring it to them or help them with it. And I was grateful that I had experiences like that where I could figure things out and try, make it work, receive some assurance in the process, and an assurance that I could try to other things. Look, there's another thing. Yes. I wish my mother was here, could tell you about this one. She's not. She's a long time gone. But she used to kind of get a kick out of me because I heard one of my friends whistle, and it wasn't the kind of whistle that was like this. It wasn't that kind of a whistle. It was the kind of the whistle that I'd show you right now, but I'm missing a tooth, and it's right where I need it, so I can't. But you kind of fold your tongue like, it gets a little bit of a fold in it, just a little short one, and you put it up next to your mouth like that. I won't even try because I know I can't. I've tried it, but I had a friend that was able to do that once, and I thought that was a pretty cool whistle, and I wish I could do it. I tried, and all I could do is I couldn't get anything to come, no whistle whatsoever. But I was pretty determined to make it happen. And the reason I mentioned my mother was because I would go around going, and nothing would happen, and nothing would happen. And I got to where I would do it in my sleep without even knowing it. But she tells me about looking in on me while I was sleeping, and I was going in there sleeping, going, and I had to kind of laugh. In fact, I still do today when I think about it, because it kind of became a habit for me to just, I don't know, maybe it was that bike experience or something, but I was just bound and determined I was going to learn how to whistle. And I'd give anything if I could just throw one out right now, because it's a really shrill, loud whistle. And I did learn how to do it finally. Came a little bit at a time, just like the bike thing did. Came just a little bit. I heard a sound. Then I thought, oh. Then I tried maybe make it a little longer and a little louder. It's like I was riding the bike down the hill, a little longer, a little more. And I did that with my whistle until I could finally get out a pretty good, long, loud whistle. And I can't even begin to tell you how many times that whistle came in handy during my life, because it was the kind of a whistle that people could hear for a long ways away. And if you wanted to get somebody's attention, and you knew there was other sounds and there was distance and they couldn't hear you, or if it was an urgent thing, like maybe a accident was about to happen, or they needed to hurry to have their attention drawn to something, and you needed to get in touch with them or make them realize something or see you wave or whatever, you could do that whistle and they'd perk up their heads and look at you. And I think if the truth be known, I may have saved some lives with that whistle, because a lot of times there would be a traffic situation and if my kids or whatever, and I'd want them to pay attention, and if I need to catch their attention before something bad happened, I'd let out a whistle. And I used to use that same whistle to call a black horse that we had up in the pasture. I'd feed him sugar cubes. And whenever I thought it'd be kind of interesting to see if he'd come and eat sugar cubes from me. And I decided every time I whistle, I'll give him a sugar cube. And this was up to the Hymas property that we leased in the barn there, and there was pasture down below it. And I'd lean out over the back doorway that was kind of the top half of the door slid open and keep the bottom half closed. And I would look at him down in the pasture, and I would let off one of those whistles, which I can't do right now. I'd let off one of those whistles, and I got him trained to the point that he knew that when I did that, there'd be a sugar cube waiting for him if he got over there and got it quick. And it was quite rewarding for me to be able to do that. And anyway, that whistling happened in a similar way that I learned how to ride my first bicycle, just through a lot of practice and patience and just keep trying and trying and trying. Something that you really wanted to see and wanted to have happen. And there were other things in my life that have been like that. I have a mouth organ, and nobody ever taught me how to play a mouth organ. I just could hear it every now and then in a song, and I'd say that it'd be nice to be able to play a mouth organ. And my father actually could play one little tune, and I thought, well, I'll get a mouth organ, and I didn't know what kind of order. I just asked somebody. I said, just give me a simple, basic mouth organ, and they did. And after a little bit of trial and error, lots of errors, lots of sucking when I should have been puffing, kind of notes missed, eventually I'd get to where I could play. The one song that my dad played was called Turkey in the Straw. And it was a song it was a tune that the old timers used to dance, square dance to it. And it kind of had a beat and a rhythm to it. And I play it even for the grandkids nowadays sometimes. And it's kind of interesting because the little great grandkids now will hear that and they'll recognize that beat to the music, and pretty soon you'll see them start to bounce up and down and carry on. Well, I wouldn't have been able to do all that unless I had just practiced the same way and kept hitting the sour notes, just like falling over on the bike or blowing air in my sleep to learn how to whistle. I just kept after it. Eventually, I got to the point that I could blow single notes on the mouth organ and play some songs that I used to like to hear. From there was a movie called Paint Your Wagon. It was a musical, and there's a song in there where I think it's Lee Marvin that sings the song. It's called "I Was Born Under a Wandering Star," and I kind of like the lyrics of it anyway, but I thought I'd try it. And it didn't take too long until I could play that song. And if I set my mind to a lot of them, I can play them now. But again, it takes a little, you have to tolerate some of my sour notes while I'm learning. And there's some that I don't even understand the keys to that I guess I'll have to advance my learning more if I want to understand different keys that they're in. I'm not even sure what a key is, to tell you the truth. But anyway, so the reason I even talk about these things is because there is a way if you set your mind to it. And I'm going to read to you now something that I hear every Sunday that I really want to do. Kind of like my bike riding and my whistling and my mouth organ playing and a whole lot of other things. Every Sunday when I go to church, I read these, or they say these words on the sacrament meeting. And they say this, the sacrament on the bread. O God, the eternal Father. By the way, Jesus was the one that instituted the sacrament. And it's by his command that we're asked to participate in that ordinance. O God, the eternal Father, we ask thee in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, to bless and sanctify this bread to the souls of all those who partake of it, that they may eat in remembrance of the body of thy Son, and witness unto thee, O God, the eternal Father, that they are willing to take upon them the name of thy Son, and then this part right here, and keep his commandments which he has given them, that they may always have his Spirit to be with them. Amen. Well, it's that last little phrase there that I want to concentrate on, because it's not a shallow ordinance. It's meaningful, and it's filled with a promise. And a lot of it lines right up with what I've been talking about, and that is this innate ability that we have to know truth intuitively. The Spirit whispers to us. It messages us. The word gospel itself means good message. Sometimes people refer to it as good news, but I like if you look it up in the Hebrew, it says good message. So I'll read it, that last part again. And keep his commandments which he has given them, his messages that come to our hearts and minds, which he has given them, that they may always have his Spirit to be with them. And we do this, it says up above, by always remember him. Always remember him. So now I've got a grown-up skill to practice. Not practicing bicycle riding on the pasture hill anymore. I've learned how to do that. And not practicing whistling. I learned how to do that. Though I'm not going to be able to do it again until I get my teeth fixed up better. And I've learned how to play the mouth organ. I've still got a ways to go, but I've learned. And now I got this grown-up skill that I've made by covenant with God to always remember him. Well, I'm back to my bicycle things. If you stop and figure it out, how are you going to always remember? Always. I thought a lot about that, because the key is in the remembering. That's the starting point. Otherwise, it's like me leaning my bike against the pole. If I never finally pushed off or remembered to lean it up there to get started, I would never have learned. And this always remember him is a little bit like that. You have to get to the point where you go through life with Jesus Christ on your mind. You're thinking about him. And one of the ways that I found is, and the scriptures say that all things bear witness that there's a God. All things. It doesn't say some things, it says all things. The things above the earth, the things in the earth, the things below the earth. All things bear witness that there is a God. So when I look at the lights on a Christmas tree, I think to myself, where does that light, where does the power for that light come from? And I start to think about that. And it doesn't take me too long to trace that back to God, because all those things, everything originates from the sun, which is his creation. And I like to think of S-O-N rather than S-U-N. Imagine what we'd have if there were no sunlight. Nothing. You start to think about that for a bit. You start to realize that you're not going to exist. It can't be any other way. There has to be the Son. So we're back to this. Always remember him. I can look at a piece of carpet on the floor and I can see his hand in that, because it's his influence that gives people ideas, light and light. He says, I am the light and the life of the world. The thoughts that we get, the benevolent thoughts, the things that help us be creative and good, are all thoughts that emanate from the good message. So I don't want to belabor that point, but I do want to make the point, because at this age of my life, I'm still using the trial and error method to learn how to ride a bike and whistle and play the mouth organ, and always remember Jesus Christ as I go through each day and night. And you can get better at that. I can testify. I know that you can improve on that, because I've been getting better. I've been getting better at recognizing the Lord's hand in things. And one of the ways I do it, since I've moved over here to Cache Valley and I'm more into the city, is it's hard for me to walk by a piece of garbage and think, well, if Jesus were here and he walked by that garbage, what would he do? He'd pick it up and put it away. And you take a shopping cart out. If Jesus is here, what would he do? Well, he'd take care of the cart, and maybe the one next to it that somebody else left, and he'd take it to where that belongs, and he'd put it away and save somebody else having to do it. If somebody needed a few extra dollars to feed them and they needed help, or you could let somebody stand in front of you in a line, give your place to them. You can, all those little things that you do, maybe it's just a smile to a cashier or somebody on the street, or maybe it's your tone of voice on the phone, or maybe it's the way you look at a sunrise or sunset, or a leaf or a bird or a blade of grass, or the joy that you get in hearing a stream run. Did you know that a stream purifies itself as it runs over the rocks? It's kind of neat, isn't it? Well, how does that happen? How does something become purified? Through that adversity of having to run over the rocks like the stream does. Well, it's the same way we do. We have rocks in our life. We run over them, we become purified. I'm starting to get a little preachy now. And sometimes when I do that, people shut me right down fast. I have found that out. But I don't apologize for it, because at this age of my life, having lived 3/4 of a century, I do have these grown-up skills that I'm still working on. And those childhood processes that I learned are the same processes that I'm trying to employ as I learn to keep my covenants with the Lord, sacrament prayers, and other things. There. Take it or leave it. That's my upload for tonight. And I know there will be some of you that receive this and are overjoyed, and there will be others of you that hear it and think, yeah, it's the old duffer getting preachy again. But I don't apologize for it, because God wants you to have it. He wants me to have it, and he wants me to have it sometimes, to synthesize it, make sense out of it, and in a loving way, try to pass it on to those that I care about too. And that'd be you. Good night.